In the US, we retire with more square footage than ever before, yet somehow, our homes feel heavier. We rent storage units, build extra closets, and stack plastic bins like trophies. I used to think I was simply being prepared. But one day, while searching for a photo album I hadn't touched in a decade, it hit me: I wasn't overwhelmed by stuff. I was overwhelmed by the habits that let it stay. These habits didn't look dramatic. No piles of boxes blocking doorways. No overflowing basements. But they were there, tucked into my morning routine, hidden in how I avoided small decisions, and disguised as just being practical. I wasn't living in clutter. I was living in quiet hesitation. And it was costing me peace. You see, I thought decluttering meant donating things or tidying up drawers. But the real work started when I asked why I was keeping certain patterns. Why I was so attached to items I never used. Why my space no longer felt like it belonged to the person I had become. If you've ever felt like your home is clean but something still feels off, this is for you. These aren't hoarding habits. They are subtle, sneaky, and they live in our daily decisions. If that makes you pause, take a second to like this video and subscribe, because we're about to talk about what's actually weighing us down after 60. And I promise, it's not just the stuff. Habit 1. Decorating around electrical outlets. I didn't notice it until I started moving things around one quiet afternoon. I was trying to create more space in my den, just a little breathing room. But every time I shifted a lamp or angled a chair differently, I kept running into the same invisible barrier, the outlet. That's when it hit me. I wasn't arranging my home for peace or purpose. I was arranging it based on where the plugs were. And here's the sneaky part: it didn't look like clutter. My rooms were clean, the floors were clear, and everything had its place. But the energy in the space? It felt stuck. Every chair, lamp, and side table was being held hostage by cords and convenience. I realized I had been shaping my environment around limitations, not intention. And for many of us over 60, especially here in the United States, this happens slowly. We prioritize what's easy to reach, what doesn't require bending down, what doesn't force us to drill new holes or reconfigure things. But over time, those little adjustments begin to shrink our homes, not in size, but in spirit. Think about it. A reading chair you don't actually enjoy because it's close to an outlet. A dark corner you avoid lighting up because the cord won't stretch. A desk shoved against the wall even though it blocks the window, just so the printer can stay plugged in. These aren't major design flaws. But they shape how we move, how we feel, and how welcome our own home feels to us. The real clutter wasn't the furniture. It was the mental block, the belief that rearranging would be too much trouble, too complicated, too risky. That it's better to leave things as they are because at least they work. But working and working well are not the same. So here's what I did, and what you might try, too. I unplugged everything. Just for an hour. I walked into each room and asked myself, if I didn't need to plug anything in, how would I arrange this space to feel more open, more calming, more me? I moved one chair. I angled a lamp. I freed a corner that had been closed off for years. And suddenly, the room exhaled. Sometimes we think we need a full renovation or new furniture to love our space again. But all we really need is to stop decorating around limitations and start decorating for light, movement, and joy. Try moving just one item today, not based on cords, but based on comfort. And let me ask you, when's the last time you moved a chair just because the lamp cord wouldn't reach? What would happen if you stopped letting your outlets decide the layout of your life? You might be surprised how much energy comes back when your space starts to reflect freedom instead of restriction. Habit 2. Leaving temporary items in permanent places. There was a bag sitting by the door. I'd seen it for months, probably more than I cared to admit. At first, it was supposed to be temporary, of course. A few old clothes for donation, a couple of books I promised to return, and that one kitchen gadget that needed fixing. But the days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months. And there it was, this temporary bag, sitting in plain view, weighing on my mind every time I walked past it. I told myself I would deal with it tomorrow. Just like that stack of mail I hadn't opened. Or the shoes I meant to donate. But tomorrow never seemed to come. It's like that bag became part of the furniture, part of the background noise in my home. I didn't even notice it until one day when I stopped and thought, why is this still here? It's not helping anyone. Not me, not the bag, and certainly not the space around it. This is what I call the temporary trap. It's easy to get caught in it, especially after 60 when life's pace shifts a bit and things slow down. We start thinking, I'll deal with that later, or it's just for now, it's not that big of a deal. And yet, these so-called temporary items often sit in our homes, long after their usefulness has passed. They become invisible clutter, things we don't truly see, but things that weigh us down mentally every single day. What's worse, when we leave them in place, they build up. One bag by the door turns into 5 bags. A few random boxes in the corner become a mountain of I'll get to it later projects. They start taking up more of our mental energy than they ever should. Think about it. That repair project you promised to do but never got around to. The books you borrowed 6 months ago, still sitting on your coffee table. The half-packed suitcase or travel bag from a trip that's long since passed. None of these items should have to live in permanent spaces. But we let them. And before we know it, they are no longer temporary at all, they are just clutter. But this clutter isn't just physical, it's mental. It's the nagging sense of unfinished business, of things left undone. It keeps us stuck. The fix? The 48-hour rule. Here's how it works. If something is meant to leave your home, whether it's an item for donation, a return, or a simple repair, take care of it in the next 48 hours. This rule cuts the excuses, the procrastination, and the mental strain that comes from seeing something out of place for too long. It forces you to make quick decisions and helps eliminate the weight that temporary things carry. So, the next time you spot something that's just sitting around, ask yourself, is this temporary, or have I let it become permanent? If it's meant to go, donate it, return it, fix it, or toss it, but don't let it take up your space or your time any longer. Look around. What's been temporary in your home for too long? The real magic happens when you get comfortable making quick, empowered decisions instead of putting things off. It's about clearing mental space just as much as clearing physical space. When I applied the 48-hour rule, my home felt lighter, and I felt more in control of what was truly important. Try it for yourself. Free up your space by deciding quickly. You'll be amazed at how much peace comes with it. Habit 3. Using clutter as visual cues. For the longest time, I believed that leaving things out in plain sight would help me remember to take care of them. If I placed the pill bottle on the table, I'd remember to take it. If I left the envelope on the counter, I'd remember to mail it. If I stacked the forms near the remote, I'd fill them out before bed. But here's what actually happened. The more I left things out, the more I overlooked them. Before I knew it, my kitchen counter wasn't a counter anymore. It was a holding zone for tasks I hadn't finished. The dining table had become a staging area. And every corner of my living space had 1 or 2 reminder items quietly gathering dust. At first glance, it didn't seem like a problem. It wasn't dirty. It wasn't chaotic. But it was slowly drowning my attention span. This habit is easy to fall into, especially for those of us in our 60s and beyond. Our memory shifts, our routines change, and sometimes we think, if I don't leave it out, I'll forget it completely. And that may be true. But here's the problem. When everything is a reminder, nothing stands out. Instead of helpful cues, I had created constant noise. Stacks of paper blended into each other. My keys and wallet got buried under well-meaning reminders. The to-do items I really needed to handle became invisible because they were sitting beside 10 others that didn't matter anymore. Visual clutter isn't just physical. It's psychological. It creates background stress we can't name. It slows us down. And worst of all, it tricks us into believing we're on top of things just because we can see them, when in reality, we've delayed decisions for weeks. The turning point for me was realizing that seeing something doesn't guarantee I'll do something. In fact, the longer an item sat out, the less urgent it felt. I was using objects to hold mental weight I no longer had room for. So I made a simple shift. I created what I call a landing tray. One tray in one consistent location. Mine sits on a small bench near the front door. Every important item I need to act on goes there. But here's the key, it doesn't become another pile. It becomes a system. At the end of each day, I review the tray. 5 minutes, that's all. What needs action? What needs to go in the calendar? What can be tossed? This broke the habit of leaving things everywhere and pretending I'd remember. It also gave me back control. My home started looking calmer. And my mind followed. So ask yourself this. Are you using clutter as a way to remember things you haven't actually handled? If so, consider setting up a central reminder system that works for you. It could be a small tray, a whiteboard on the fridge, a simple notebook by the phone. Anything that helps you gather your attention instead of scattering it across 5 different surfaces. You don't need more reminders. You need better ones. Free the counters. Free your vision. Free your mind. You deserve to live in a home that helps you breathe, not one that nags you with every glance. Habit 4. Collecting tools for a life I no longer live. There was a time when Saturday mornings meant the smell of cinnamon rolls in the oven, 2 kids fighting over who got the corner piece, and flour dusted across half the kitchen floor. That version of my life? It was beautiful. But it's not the life I live now. And yet, the baking pans, pastry brushes, cookie cutters, and holiday-themed aprons were still there. Sitting in the back of cabinets. Tucked into drawers I hadn't opened in years. Every time I saw them, a part of me smiled, but another part whispered, "You should use those again." Only, I never did. What I eventually realized is that I wasn't just keeping kitchen tools. I was holding on to a role. The holiday host, the birthday cake maker, the mom who always had banana bread ready for last-minute visitors. But that role had shifted. My kids had families of their own. The kitchen was quieter now. And deep down, I wasn't keeping those muffin tins because I planned to bake. I was keeping them because they reminded me of who I used to be. And it wasn't just baking supplies. I found camping gear from a trip we took to Yellowstone in the 90s. Old craft supplies from when I volunteered at my daughter's elementary school. Party decorations for themed birthdays long outgrown. These items weren't clutter in the traditional sense. They were clean, neatly stored, and organized. But emotionally, they were cluttering the present with pressure from the past. This is one of the most overlooked habits among seniors, especially here in the US, where we often measure time by activity. We keep the tools, even when we no longer have the energy, interest, or lifestyle to use them. But holding onto tools for a life we no longer live creates tension. It quietly tells us we're behind on something. That we're missing a step, forgetting a role, or wasting potential. Let me be clear, there's nothing wrong with keeping a few meaningful items. But there is a difference between honoring your past and being weighed down by it. So here's the simple question I started asking. Does this match my life now, or just my memories? If the answer was just my memories, I found a new way to honor it. I took a photo of that muffin tin before donating it. I journaled a memory of the last time we used the camping stove. I allowed the story to stay, while releasing the object. Your home should reflect who you are, not just who you were. And the truth is, if I ever decide to bake again, I can always find a pan. What I really needed was room to grow into this new chapter, without old tools silently pressuring me to be someone I no longer am. Take a quiet walk through your home today. Open a drawer or a storage bin. Look not at the object, but at the life it represents. Then ask yourself, honestly, what tools or supplies am I keeping for a version of life that no longer exists? When you make peace with the idea that your value isn't tied to past roles, you make room for new routines, lighter spaces, and a sense of freedom that doesn't rely on memory alone. It's not about erasing the past. It's about letting the present breathe. Habit 5. Protecting storage zones instead of using them. There's a linen closet in my hallway that used to make me oddly proud. The towels were folded just right. The sheets were sorted by season. Labels on bins. Lavender sachets tucked in the corners. It looked like something out of a magazine. And yet, despite all that organization, I barely touched it. Why? Because I didn't want to mess it up. I'd go to the laundry room for a towel rather than disturb the perfect setup in that closet. I'd dig through an old storage bin in the garage for pillowcases before I'd pull one from the labeled shelf. Somewhere along the line, that closet stopped being useful and started being sacred. It was my don't touch it zone, even though no one else lived with me. That's when I realized I was protecting storage zones more than I was using them. It was less about convenience and more about keeping something in perfect condition, as if preserving the organization itself was the goal. And this is something I think a lot of us do, especially after 60. We spend energy arranging things neatly, our cabinets, drawers, containers, and then become reluctant to use them. Because the moment we do, we disrupt that sense of order. We ruin the display. And somewhere deep inside, we confuse that order with control. But here's the problem. Storage is meant to serve life, not look like a photo on Pinterest. If a drawer is beautifully organized but you're still digging through 3 different boxes to find what you need, the system has failed. I realized I was turning parts of my home into exhibits, places that looked nice but didn't help me live better. And while that might seem harmless, it actually created stress. I was tiptoeing around my own space, afraid to use what I had already prepared for use. So I gave myself permission to mess it up. I pulled towels from the linen closet without straightening them afterward. I moved bins around. I let the perfect give way to the practical. And something surprising happened. My space became more useful, more honest, more alive. Sometimes we cling to perfect storage because it gives us a sense of accomplishment. We finally got it all sorted, and we want to keep it that way. But when that order becomes more important than ease, it stops serving us. Storage should never become a shrine. It should be fluid, flexible, responsive to your real life, not your idea of an ideal one. So here's something to think about. Is there a drawer, a shelf, or a closet in your home that you've avoided using, just because it's already organized? What if you gave yourself permission to use it freely, even if it meant the labels weren't lined up anymore? What if usefulness mattered more than tidiness? Because the truth is, you didn't create those storage systems to impress anyone. You created them to make your life easier. And if they're not doing that, they deserve to be reshaped, just like any other part of your home. You don't need picture-perfect order. You need spaces that make your everyday life smoother, lighter, and more free. Let the linen closet be a little messy. Let the drawer hold what you actually need. And let go of the pressure to keep everything just so. Your home isn't a museum. It's a reflection of your life, and life, especially in this chapter, should be lived, not displayed. Habit 6. Turning corners into decision-free zones. There's a chair in my guest room that hasn't been sat in for years, but not because it's uncomfortable. It's because it quietly turned into my holding zone. A bag from the store, a sweater I wasn't sure I'd keep, an unopened letter, a magazine I meant to read. One thing after another landed there, not permanently, just for now. Only, for now became indefinite. And I see it happen in so many homes, especially for those of us over 60. There's always that one chair, that one corner, that one low bench in the hallway or entryway that becomes a magnet for indecision. We don't label it as clutter, because technically, it's just temporary. But the truth is, these little piles start carrying more emotional weight than we realize. They're not just piles of stuff, they're postponed decisions. Visual reminders that something still needs attention. And the more we let these spots build up, the more invisible pressure they create in our minds. Every time we walk past them, there's a microstress. I need to deal with that. I'll get to it tomorrow. But tomorrow turns into next week, and next week turns into a season. What starts as a small chair in the corner becomes a symbol of how many things we're avoiding. It's not laziness, it's protection. After a certain age, we start choosing our energy more carefully. We avoid draining decisions, even small ones. But when avoidance becomes routine, it creates its own kind of clutter, the quiet kind that weighs you down without making a mess. So how do you fix it without adding more pressure or complicated systems? Here's what changed everything for me. I started using the two-touch rule. It's simple, and it works. If something lands on a surface in my home, a chair, a table, a shelf, I only get to touch it twice. Once when I place it there, and once when I move it to its final destination. That's it. The second time I touch it, I can't just shift it somewhere else or move it into another later pile. I have to either put it away, toss it, donate it, or act on it. No circling back. No, I'll move this to another room and think about it later. That habit is what caused the build-up in the first place. And the beauty of the two-touch rule is this. It doesn't rely on timers or guilt, it relies on intention. It turns later into now without rushing you. And it protects your energy and your space by making sure everything you bring into your home is handled with clarity. After I applied it, that guest room chair finally became a chair again. The hallway bench stayed clear. And best of all, my day didn't start with the silent pressure of 5 unresolved piles scattered across the house. Let me ask you, what's your home's version of the "I'll deal with it later" corner? And what would happen if you told yourself, next time I touch it, I handle it for good? You deserve a space that serves you, not one that nags at you quietly, day after day. Sometimes, peace starts with a simple rule, and a chair that finally gets to be just a chair again. Habit 7. Treating past investments as current priorities. There was a rug in my living room, soft burgundy with gold threading around the edge. I bought it nearly 15 years ago after seeing it on sale at a fancy home goods store. Back then, I had just retired and wanted my space to feel warm and put together. That rug felt like an investment. It made the room look finished. I even remember how proud I was when I laid it down for the first time. But fast forward to today, and the rug didn't match anything in my life anymore. The colors clashed with the softer tones I'd gradually grown to love. The corners curled slightly. And every time I vacuumed, I had to go out of my way to tug it back into place. But I didn't move it. I didn't donate it. I didn't even question it. Why? Because it cost me $200. And something about that number, the memory of handing over the money, made it feel permanent. This is one of the most deceptive forms of clutter we face in later life. Emotional attachment to past spending. We confuse the cost of something with its value. We look at an item and think, I can't get rid of that, I spent good money on it. But we rarely ask the better question, is it still adding anything to my life now? And it's not just rugs. It's the expensive recliner that hurts your back. The set of china you've never used but keep in a cabinet just in case. The treadmill that became a coat rack. The designer coat you haven't worn in 10 winters. It's incredibly common among older adults in the US, where we were taught to get our money's worth. But here's the thing no one told us, keeping something you no longer use doesn't return your investment, it just takes up space. That's why I started practicing what I call future-focused living. Every time I come across something I'm holding on to because of how much I paid, I ask myself, if I saw this in a store today, would I buy it again? If the answer is no, I let it go. Because if I wouldn't spend money on it today, it no longer deserves to cost me space, energy, or attention. And there's something powerful in that mindset shift. It frees you from the invisible pressure of sunk costs. You're no longer tied to decisions made years ago by a different version of yourself. You're living in the present, for your current needs. This doesn't mean we toss everything old or valuable. It means we stop allowing past purchases to control today's peace. The rug? I donated it to a local housing center. Someone else now gets to enjoy it, and I got to enjoy a space that finally reflects who I am now, not who I was when I bought it. So ask yourself, with complete honesty, what's something in your home that you only keep because of what it used to cost? Is it helping you today, or holding you back? The truth is, every object has two prices, the one you paid for it, and the one you keep paying in mental weight, guilt, and lost space if it no longer fits your life. And at this stage in life, you deserve to stop paying for the past, and start designing a home that makes sense for your future. When I first started decluttering, I thought the goal was to own less. Less furniture. Fewer piles. Fewer things in the corners and closets. And while clearing physical space did help, something unexpected happened along the way. I began shedding the emotional weight I didn't know I was carrying. It wasn't the donation bags that made the biggest difference. It was realizing why I was keeping certain things in the first place. It was noticing the habits I had let run my life quietly, habits that didn't feel like clutter, but were silently tying me to old expectations, outdated roles, and unfinished decisions. I had to ask myself some hard questions. Why was I still arranging rooms around convenience instead of comfort? Why did I keep things I hadn't used in years, hoping they'd one day feel useful again? Why was I protecting perfectly organized drawers instead of letting them serve me? And why did I keep delaying tiny choices that were easy to make, just because they piled up unnoticed? The real breakthrough didn't happen when the house looked cleaner. It happened when I realized I had finally stopped living in a past version of myself. My space didn't just look different, it felt different. Quieter, but not empty. Simpler, but not cold. I had created space that matched who I am now, not who I was 20 years ago. My decisions became easier, because I no longer felt pulled in 10 directions. My routines felt lighter, because I wasn't spending my day moving things around I didn't even want. And most of all, I started to feel like I was back in control, not of stuff, but of how I live my days. Decluttering isn't really about minimalism. It's not about getting your home to look like a showroom. It's about stopping the quiet stress that builds when our homes no longer match our lives. And sometimes, it's not the items we need to release, it's the assumptions that came with them. The idea that we must hold on because we once paid for it. Or that if we let go, we're letting go of love, or identity, or usefulness. But I've learned, releasing something doesn't erase the story. It just gives it closure. Now, I walk into my space and feel peace instead of pressure. Not because I own less, but because I let go of the things that no longer serve the person I've become. And if you're watching this and any part of it made your shoulders drop or your chest feel a little lighter, then maybe you've been carrying something invisible, too. So, let me ask you, which one of these habits snuck into your life without you even realizing it? Tell me in the comments, I truly want to hear what spoke to you. And if this video helped, even in a small way, please take a moment to hit that like button, share this with someone over 60 who deserves to feel at peace in their own space, and subscribe to Wise Aging Seniors. Because your home shouldn't be a storage space for your past. It should be a sanctuary for who you are becoming.